Welcome to Under the Rug at Work, where I shine light on things that are normally swept under the rug. Today, I'm chatting with John Toomey about attention. John is the founder of Wide Awake Wellness, the host of the podcast Good Bloke, Not Woke, the global chair of the Workplace Wellbeing Initiative at the Global Wellness Institute in Miami, and he's also the author of In It for the Long Haul, Making the Most Out of the FIFO Lifestyle. Thank you so much for joining me, John. I really appreciate you coming on.
Fantastic, Nicole. It's really good to be here.
Before we jump into the topic, can you share a little bit about your background and experience?
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, I started out my career as a phys ed, and although I never taught, I worked in health clubs. I wrote a lot of the original courses for fitness leaders, aerobics teachers and fitness instructors. Worked in universities lecturing while doing my master's studies, worked in AFL in high performance roles for about 7 different clubs. Always did a lot of presenting seminars in workplaces, just on health and fitness and those sorts of things, and always studying and learning. And then in 2012, I was invited to deliver some education on fatigue prevention in the mining industry. So that took me out of white collar and into blue collar, and really white collar was dead at the time after the 2008 GFC. Nobody wanted to spend any money. And also in 2005, I embarked on a lot of studying human consciousness and how it functions and operates. And that sort of really expanded my understanding of humans and how we behave and how we function in the world. So it gave me a lot of really good tools to be able to educate workplaces. So now I do a lot of speaking in workplaces globally, and also do a lot of writing on these sorts of topics. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. That could be another podcast in itself. We might have to come back to that. But on this topic, what are you seeing in the workplace when it comes to our attention?
Well, look, it's amazing. I mean, if I give perhaps a little bit of a foundation, attention is a really interesting thing. Because like I can be talking to you now and I'm going to give you all of my attention. I'm looking straight into that camera and you get all of my attention and you feel like I'm talking directly to you. Now, if you take a beam of light, for example, a physicist can break that beam of light down into a specified number of photons. They're subatomic particles. So let's just say that attention can be broken down into units. And let's say I've got 1 trillion units of attention to use at any one time. Now, while I'm talking to you, I'm going to give all 1 trillion units of attention to you. Yeah. And it feels good to you, right?
Yeah.
It's what every woman says. I just want my husband to give me his attention. And but let's just say that just before our meeting, I've got some bad news about something. Now I'm sitting here, I'm trying to give you my attention, but there's attention flowing back into my mind, because attention can go out and it can go in. Yeah. And so a big chunk of my attention's in my mind and it's ruminating or worrying or fretting over something, you see. And then you notice me becoming a little bit sort of distracted, and I'm sort of looking away, and I'm catching myself, and I'm missing what you're saying, and our communication's not very good, and because I haven't got control of my attention. Now, we all know what this is like, because you'll remember a time, maybe every day, when you get in your car and you drive, say, 40 minutes across town, and you arrive at your destination with no recollection of the trip. Mm-hmm. Because you had just enough attention on what you need to drive, and the rest will have been in your mind. And a lot of the people listening to this podcast know what it's like to have a very busy mind and be thinking all the time, yeah? So what happens if I walk out onto a construction site where there's a lot of moving vehicles, and there's a lot happening, it's a very dynamic atmosphere, and there's a lot of potential dangers, and all of my attention's in my mind because I'm reenacting the argument I had with my partner last night. Yeah. All of a sudden, whilst my eyes are open, I'm not actually seeing anything. I mean, that's the bottom line. Yeah. And a worker who's in that state is dangerous. And I've been saying to work sites for years, check in with your people. Allow them to check in with you. Allow them to come to you and say, boss, my attention's all stuck in my mind because I had a blue with my missus last night. Yeah. And I need to do something to get my attention off myself. And then actually teach the workers how to do things to help them get their attention back out into the world.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so true. Like if you have, a death in the family, or an argument, or I think this is where definitely where psychosocial hazards come in, because if there's not clarity around something, then you're ruminating over that, and it's taking away from that attention, and you are spot on. It's unsafe.
Yeah. Well, that's why there's such a strong case for giving workers very, very good financial education to help them to be better savers and to be more conservative around their spending, so they're not walking around at work ruminating over financial problems,
Yeah. And if
Like,
only that was taught in schools.
well, I mean, people in Australia shouldn't have financial problems. Like, really shouldn't, but that's the reality, and the problem then is that if we don't learn the skills to recognize when we've got too much attention going back in here and not enough attention out there, it can become chronic. And then we get to the point where we become very self-absorbed, and everything becomes about me and how hard it is for me and what's going on for me, and we forget about the other. And then if I'm then, for example, and I mean, this is simplifying things, but let's just say I've created a lot of financial drama for myself. Pretty soon, with all that worry and stuff, I'm going to be starting to come down on myself and be critical of myself for making stupid decisions. And I'm going to be angry about this and agitated about that. And then somebody else comes to correct me for something, I'm probably going to explode, because you've just validated to me what I've been saying to myself. And so this whole state of self-absorption, I believe, is really the front door to depression, and too much self-absorption. But we can learn how to change that by learning about the behaviors that we can adopt in life that help us get our attention off ourselves. And in doing so, start to raise our self-acceptance and start us liking ourselves. And that's simple stuff like being really kind to another human being, especially a stranger. Acknowledging people, saying, "Wow, Nicole, that's a really beautiful jacket that you're wearing. I love the color." You know what I mean? It's a very simple thing, Or, "Gee, Bob, you're looking pretty fit, mate. You've been doing a bit of training, have you?" Or, whatever it is, just noticing other people. We first have to start noticing other people, then that gives us the opportunity to be good to them and encourage them for their efforts, or acknowledge them for the quality of their work, or and those are the things that help us relearn to get our attention back out into the world.
And look, going back to your point a little earlier, I've heard that before, that depression is really repetitive, negative self-talk. And if you flip it, if you had repetitive, positive self-talk, then we probably wouldn't get into a cycle of being quite down and quite insular. And we need to pick ourselves up on our thoughts. And often that cycle is pretty difficult to get out of. And you've shared, a little bit on how we can shift that. Is there any other tools or tips to stop being internally focused, or even just when we're going down that spiral, how can we put a bit of a stopgap in to be a bit more externally connected? And I've heard, random acts of kindness, which is, what you were talking about just before, is incredible at giving us more joy, seeing joy from someone else and something else we've done.
Well, could you imagine what it'd be like if you're in a restaurant and you're having a meal, and it's a really yummy meal, you really enjoy it. Some people might say, "Oh, compliments to the chef." Well, that's fine, But what would happen if you do what I like to do is you actually get up and go and look for the kitchen and poke your head into the kitchen and go, "Who cooked that lasagna?" And someone looks up and goes, "Oh, he did." And I go, "Man, that was good," And And you see that person just get inflated a little bit in that moment because you made them feel really validated, and you walk out and you cannot help but feel good about yourself.
Yes.
But it's the same point where we choose not to do things that we then regret, and then we degrade ourselves. So, example, take some of the work that you've done. You're in a workplace and some man is really inappropriate in the way that he talks to you.
Yeah.
And I hear it.
Yeah.
If I let that go by, it's going to chew on me forever.
Yeah.
But if I stand in and I go, hang on a minute, you can't say that to her.
Mm.
This is a really decent human being who's part of our team, who's got beautiful skills, and she brings so much quality, and you choose to treat her like that?
Mm.
Not on, buddy.
Yeah.
So, and really show up in the world as a carer and as a guardian of other people.
Mm.
Then I'm going to grow an inch.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk it, not because my ego is big, but because I stood up and I had the courage to do the right thing.
Yeah. And I would feel that as well, because a lot
Yeah.
of times people don't know what to do and don't know what to say. And then we say nothing, which ends up making the culture of the environment get worse. Because if that's accepted, then it stretches, right? And then that
Yeah.
becomes acceptable behavior. So what that
Yeah.
does in a non-threatening way is just put that stopgap in to say, hey, this is how we behave. This is how we
Yeah.
don't behave. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I could wait till you're gone and correct the person, but that would have been the wrong thing to do, because you need to know that you're being someone standing up for you,
yeah,
And it's like we're gonna show up for each other, and when men don't show up, they don't like themselves. It's not just the act of not showing up; it's what they do to themselves afterwards that's
yeah,
really degrading, and that's why a lot of men are concerned about upsetting people, and they don't know what their masculinity is. But the masculinity is standing up and being courageous and not giving a shit about what other people are going to say,
yeah,
because in the moment that's what you've got to do.
yeah. And it's the right thing. And it's also how you do it as well, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people get triggered and defensive. So if we're doing it in an aggressive way, it can cause more harm. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
coming at it from, as you said, that traditional masculinity, the support, the caring, the, hey, we don't do
Mm-hmm.
that around here, then
Yeah.
that's how it's felt as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you asked for other tips. One of the things I tell the guys, like on a construction site, for example, when you arrive at work and you step out of the site, before you do anything, take a look around and see if you can notice 10 things that you've never noticed before.
Mm.
So it's putting your attention right at the site, and you're actually really, really looking at the site, But also in that, it's not just sight, it's sound. Can you hear something that you've never heard before? Yeah. So it's tuning all of your senses, because attention is not just a sight thing,
Yeah.
It can also be a sense of something behind you, It's like, it's very interesting. But just, yeah, like what did our school teachers always say to us? Pay attention.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And just on that point, I was at an organization not long ago, and they said to me, look, our plant has been like this for years, and we were doing a risk assessment for different things, and we found something that shouldn't have been there, but no one had seen it, and neither had the health and safety committee. It's part of the furniture.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
we were just looking at things differently and doing a bit of an assessment, and they were able to put their attention on it and go, whoa, okay, we need to change that. It wasn't a
Yeah.
huge issue, but it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
really important to do that. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Just that whole different eyes thing
Yeah.
is quite incredible. But how many times have you heard somebody? Because sometimes, we can be walking through a site, and we won't be something that we see or hear, it'll be just something we feel.
Yes.
Like we could walk past two people having a conversation or something, and there's just a feeling that we get. We don't know what that feeling is, but if we dismiss it. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say, I knew that was going to happen? So was no good saying that now, champ, you know. Why didn't you speak up? Well, because I didn't quite understand, you know, but it doesn't matter. To walk up to a foreman and say, hey, something doesn't feel right over there. I don't know what it is. I wish I could be more specific, but something doesn't feel right.
Yep.
That's paying attention, yeah.
And then that gets their attention as well. So together, more focused attention will help get to the root of the problem, right?
Yeah, and you know, one thing I'll say to you that I have been saying as well to the sites, and this hasn't gone over, I'm not saying it hasn't gone over well, it's just not going over at the moment, but there are people in our community who are very sensitive and they feel a lot. I'm not talking about the people who get offended at everything.
Yeah.
They're the artists, they're the musicians. They've got this incredible capacity to feel and perceive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're the ones I would be saying on the work sites, if ever you feel anything, you tell me.
Yeah.
You know, because they've got a radar that most people haven't got, you know, and it's not intellectual, it's not brain related, it's something else. But man, those people are an asset. They really are. Yeah.
And it's trusting your gut, trusting your intuition,
Yeah.
trusting that your attention needs to be somewhere, but you may not know where that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, we look at Indigenous kids playing Aussie rules.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, the ball goes flying out into the wild and there's this Indigenous kid out there and you said to him, how did you know to be out there? And he'll tell you, well, I don't know. I just went out there, you know. There's some sort of sense because they tend to live with their attention out in the world. They're not walking around thinking all the time, you know.
Yeah.
It's a very different way of existing because when you're living a nomadic life out in the wild, you're to be paying attention to everything because it's your food sources, the danger, whatever the case. But in a modern society where everything's safe, it's too easy to forget about having our attention out, and that's when we start thinking too much, you know. It's so interesting.
It is. And I've noticed that living in the bush now too. There's different bird songs, there's different bird calls when there's danger. And I know when something's going on and they tell you there's a dog or there's a goanna or something's going on and you need to be out there to help. So
yeah, wow.
It is
So
incredible how
interesting,
your
eh?
senses change. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So if people want to learn more about you, John, how can they connect with you?
Oh, look, I'm pretty easy to find. I mean, I've got a very big head, so it sticks out on LinkedIn. But they can connect with me on LinkedIn or on my website, which is wideawakewellness.com.au. And yeah, drop me a note and have a chat for sure.
I'll add those links in the show notes as well so people can connect with you. And this won't be our only chat. We were chatting beforehand and went into a lot of topics that I think we can dive into. But I really appreciate you coming on today to chat about attention and really bring people's attention to improve work health and safety.
Well, and the really cool thing about it, Nicole, is that, you know, kindness is the pathway to peace of mind.
Yes.
And, you know, kindness is a superpower that everybody has. And in a busy world, we can forget it. But really, let's get back to it and start to be really kind to as many people as we can in the world. And sometimes kindness means you've got to pull somebody up when they're behaving badly. It has many flavors, but it's the intention behind it that's really cool. And yeah, we can change the world. We really can, and we can really help workplaces become beautiful cultures where people feel that they can really be themselves and deliver their best qualities to the workplace. You know.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, Nicole. You have a beautiful day, huh?
You too.
All righty. Take care.